I'm going to talk about a plant, sugarcane, and what that can do to substantially reduce emission from transportation. Transportation emission is a big problem in the CO2 picture. It's the biggest emitting area, and we have a solution sort of for cars, in electric cars. In Norway, that's half of all new cars are electrical. That will come through the world strongly in the next couple of decades. But it does not solve the problem for heavy transport, for aircraft or marine. For that we're trying now, we're looking at hydrogen, we're looking at ammonia, all of which are maybe good solutions, but are untried and expensive. But we have a solution that's actually in operation, is competitive in cost with gasoline, and has a substantial reduction, 70–80% reduction in CO2 emission. That solution is sugarcane ethanol. Now, what is that? Sugarcane is a sort of grass. It grows very rapidly, 2 meters in a year. It is the most efficient converter of sunshine and water to biological mass and sugar there is. It's way more than solar panels. It produces biological mass and sugar at a huge volume. 1 hectare, it produces 80 tons a year. By comparison, the boreal forest around here is 3 to 4 tons a year, so it's 20 times as much. That grows abundantly in Brazil, and what's the trick of it? We harvest that plant once a year, crush it, out of which comes the juice, which we then ferment, out of which comes alcohol or ethanol. That ethanol is used to run cars. It does the same job as gasoline, but reduces emissions by about 70 or 80%. That's dramatic. The reason it does that is, of course, when the plant grows, it ties up oxygen, CO2, that's what it needs to grow, and when it runs in the engine, the oxygen, CO2 comes out again. That's the same process that gasoline or coal does, but the difference is that those two, the fossil, absorbed the CO2 20 million years ago and emits it today. Sugarcane ethanol does all of that in 1 year, and consequently it reduces emissions dramatically relative to gasoline. We also get out of the, when we crush it, something we call bagasse, which is the straws that left. We burn that and get electricity. That is also electricity with a dramatic reduction in CO2. So how does this work? The sugarcane ethanol is in fact a simple form of rum. You can drink it, it tastes awful. But on the petrol station in Brazil, you can either get ethanol or petrol, right next to one another. And roughly half of the cars in Brazil run on ethanol. That is partly because it's mixed into the petrol of 28%, and some cars run at 100%. A normal engine can run up to 28%. You need to change a bit in the gasket and so on to go to 100%. But the beauty of it is that you get a dramatic reduction in CO2 emissions with the existing distribution system, the decision petrol stations, and the decision cars and engines. That means that the changeover is very easy. On top of that, the cost on the pump in Brazil competes directly one-on-one. And we have 40–50% of the cars in Brazil run on this, and it occupies roughly 1% of the farming area in Brazil. There's a lot of criticism of ethanol, some of it well-founded. The ethanol from corn, the same ethanol, but it does not have the same reduction in CO2, simply because corn grows much more slowly and you use a lot of fossil fuels in making it. It also competes with food. Sugarcane, of course, competes with food, but in Brazil the area is so enormous and there's lots of vacant land, so up to a sort of 4% of the land it does not compete with food. In Brazil, some people are concerned that it has to do with Amazon and the rainforest. It doesn't. It's 2,000 kilometers from the cane growing areas to the Amazons. What's the future of this? There's a need now to meet the Paris targets for a rapid changeover and reducing emissions, and notably so on transportation. Blending in 28% is a simple way. It's being actively pursued in Singapore, China, India and Japan at the moment, because those places will have a big task in converting to electrical vehicles. And this is sort of bridge fuel. It can be done right away, and maybe electric cars are in another 20 years. The other part is on heavy-duty vehicles. Batteries are too heavy. They are not concentrated enough in energy. Sugarcane ethanol is. So it goes on heavy fuel, on biodiesel. It can also go in aircraft as Jet A1. And it can also be used in ships. Not large ships, but it's very useful in fast, small vessels. So all in all, this is really quite attractive. And Brazil, if it uses 4% of the land area, it will have a production equivalent to 2.5 million barrels of oil a day. That's roughly equivalent to production in Abu Dhabi or Nigeria or even Norway. So it has the potential to be an important fuel. It's important for fuel, it's important for generating electricity, and it's an important part in reducing emissions, and we have it now.